So this is Waypoint Web3. This is weekly Twitter Spaces that was started and produced by Sanctor Capital United Gamers. It's kind of a safe space for everybody to talk about all things Web3 gaming. The space is evolving daily, and so I felt like it was important for us to be able to discuss everything from technology to genres to kind of random current events. And so this space took place. My name's Ilya. I'm the host and also co-founder and partner at Sanctor Capital. We invest in back early stage teams in the Web3 space with a primary focus in metaverse and gaming. So you might imagine this was a very logical thing for us to do. Here's Alex. And so today, just before we get started, I do have to give a number of disclosures. And, none of what you hear today will be legal or financial advice. All the opinions are my own. You may hear of assets, companies, and/or other things mentioned here where we had positions, have positions, or may hold positions in the future. In the interest, kind of a full disclosure, we have backed United Gamers and also The Harvest, who will be speaking today as well. And we have all of our speakers. This is a recorded space, so you will be able to listen or re-listen to it in the future, and you can go back and listen to previous talks, episodes that have happened. And so now, without kind of further ado, I do want to introduce our speakers. We'll be talking about third-person shooters today, and we have represent 5 awesome games talking to us today. So I'll just call on you in order, and if you could kind of say a few words about kind of who you are, how you got into Web3 gaming, what you're doing, that would be great. Andy, you up first on my screen. So if we can get started with you, that'd be great.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Andrew. I am the CEO and founder of Galaxy Rendered. We are currently building Rocket Monsters. We are a multiplayer PvP, PvE, bordering on MMO RPG, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you. Decimated, would you like to speak?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Ilya. Thanks for the invitation. I'm Stephen Arnold. I'm the CEO and creative director of Fracture Labs, which is developing Decimated, which is an open world survival sandbox in Unreal Engine 5. I've been working in the video games industry for more than 15 years. I started this project in 2018, and now we've got a team of more than 50 people working on the project who have worked on games like World of Tanks, Cyberpunk 2077, Batman Arkham Origins, Star Citizen, and many other AAA titles. So it's a pleasure to meet everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The Harvest.
Hey everyone, my name is Paolo, and I'm leading the community and the growth part of The Harvest. And I've been involved in the growth of other Web3 games like Planet Quest, one of the main games in IMX. And now I'm super excited to be joining The Harvest. And yeah, can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you. No Way Back.
Hi guys, happy to be here. I'm Guillermo. I'm head of partnerships at No Way Back and Elixir Games also. And yeah, so our game is a kind of a battle royale team deathmatch, third-person shooter and first-person shooter. We just added that a few weeks ago. That basically it's kind of a blend between Fortnite and Naruto. Pretty cool with abilities and cool stuff. So. Yeah, you can check it out in Elixir, and yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you. Evan?
What's up, guys? My name is Evan Ryer, and I am the co-founder and CEO at Bravo Ready, the parent company behind BR1 Infinite, the world's first risk-based shooter, where you pay real money to spawn into our 300-player, 6-kilometer map, and for every player that you eliminate, you earn the greater of 10% of all of the cash on them, or their entry fee. unlike many other games, our game is an infinite royale. The game has no timer, no start and no finish. That means when you hop into the game, players may have already been in there for hours, and you play until you die or you get extracted.
Awesome. Thank you so much. These are our awesome speakers. Thank you for joining us. Today we're talking about third-person shooters, I would remind you. And so the way I want to run this conversation, I want to do minimal amount of talking. I will throw out questions, topics, and then everybody can jump in. You don't need to raise your hand. You don't need to kind of jump into any particular order. If people are really shy, I will start picking on somebody. But other than that, hopefully we'll get into a nice free flow conversation. To start, broadly, what makes third-person shooters so compelling and exciting? Why do people like to play this particular genre, or why did you decide to build a game in this particular genre?
Okay, maybe I can start. So I think third-person shooters is the genre that basically it's more dynamic. There's no games like that. I mean, you can multiplayer, kill a lot of people, and it's the funnest games out there, and that's why most of the games are I think they're third person. So yeah, that'll be my take on it.
I agree. They're a lot more dynamic. You can see so much more of what you're doing, especially when you're going through the different worlds. It's a lot different than just first person, where you're just a set of arms. Being able to see everything, see your character, especially if you're putting the time and energy as a player into your character, being able to see those changes is amazing.
I think that what makes third-person games so compelling is that the players are playing a protagonist, and they're able to be told a story through another character, whether that's a character that they've created themselves through a character customization, or if it's the protagonist of the actual game, maybe Mad Max or one of the characters from Grand Theft Auto, for example. So yeah, it's like you're able to experience the world through the characters that you're playing, the protagonists that you're playing.
I guess in my pursuits, I'm a big fan of the third-person shooter simply because it is a much more strategic type of gameplay opportunity. There's a lot more strategy that you can implement when you're looking over your shoulder. You're able to see around doors, see around corners. Similarly, knowing that your opponents can see you in a similar light totally affects your gameplay and your fight or flight response when you get into the thick of it.
And in the Harvest, we're actually having skins. So I think what I love about it is admiring the skins that I own, because everybody knows skins versus skills, right? No, just kidding. But yeah, that's definitely part of it. The exploration, rewarding exploration, and seeing the hard work that you put in and how the merit, grants you the rewards, like the skins on your guns or on your character. I think that's always pretty to look at and add some longevity for me in playing.
By the way, I just wanted to mention I can't hear Evan. I can hear everybody else, but when Evan speaks, I can't hear anything he says.
That's peculiar. Does anybody else have that problem? I hear Evan fine, but
sorry to hear that, brother.
Anybody else?
I can hear Evan.
I can hear him.
Okay.
I can hear him too.
So we'll assume, Stephen, that this is kind of a technological peculiarity on your side, and hopefully it goes away. Jumping ahead, everybody here is building in Web3. What does Web3 stack, what does blockchain technology add to third-person shooters?
Well, whether it's the third-person shooter or any shooter as a whole, the elements of Web3 that create the greatest meaning for a gamer, and I guess in my opinion, is the element of provably fair items and liquidity of those items. And in line with what one of our colleagues was saying just before, third-person shooter is a great opportunity to flex your skins and see the achievements, earnings, and accessories that you may have earned playing your game. And knowing that these items are provably fair and that you're one of 100, one of 10, one of 20 who owns this thing, and you have the ability to display it, but as well the knowledge of gaining liquidity, that's really exciting for me. And our value proposition has always been creating tangible value for gamers, and those are the elements of Web3 that I think create that tangible value.
I would agree. That's an amazing part of it. Sitting here building, there are many times where I've sat and thought about what it would be like to own an asset from games that I grew up playing, like say something from Zelda or Mario, Star Fox, anything, Metal Gear Solid, and to actually have that real world experience with my son, who's constantly asking for V-Bucks for skins that he's never gonna, they're never gonna go anywhere but on that game. So to be able to change that dynamic for the future of gamers is huge.
At the Harvest, I think what we're exploring is a little bit more on the. Of course, we're totally on board with assets, and having and going beyond the walled garden of your own gaming ecosystem, right? But beyond that, we're also exploring the possibilities of helping through Web3, helping prevent or have a deterrence against Smurfs, right? So how that means, so there's two ways, right? One is, for example, we're exploring this soul-bound tokens in Binance, where you're required to be KYC'd. Maybe that's something that we can apply for ranked games. I know it's probably sensitive because KYC is not for everyone, but it's one way of doing it, right? I mean, Steam is doing it for Dota on requiring phone numbers, so that's already one step there. And I think maybe that's something we can explore, and it's immutable because it's blockchain. Second, that I think I'm excited exploring is having these proven quests that you have fulfilled them through your participation, and maybe it's through your wallets or through your accounts. But basically, as we go through different platforms like Quest3 or Galax or whatnot, right? So the certain tasks that you perform, and then once you have achieved those, everybody knows indisputably that it is you or bound to that wallet or your wallet that actually achieved those quests, right? And thereby winning certain prizes, or maybe skins or certain privileges in the game or certain roles in the community. And I think that's something that is harder to replicate in the Web 2 experience that Web 3 can probably provide a solution for.
Yeah, I think that Web3 unlocks for third-person games the ability for the players to be able to customize their character and their vehicle and their weapon and actually be able to see it inside the world. Whereas if you were playing the game in first person, then you wouldn't actually see your character. In Cyberpunk 2077, for example, you can customize your character, you can add tattoos, change your hairstyle, change what you're wearing, but you don't actually see any of that because it's a first-person game. But with third-person games, of course, everything, all the changes that you make, you can see. And this is something that I used to always do when I was playing Ghost Recon Wildlands, for example. It's like you've got the ability to change your character and have your character load out exactly the way that you want. So I think that's the possibility that Web3 unlocks.
Yep. Also, in Noe Back, we are doing some cross IP stuff with NFT communities like DGods or Monkeys and others, and other games like Runiverse or some other games that we have in the platform, and that is really cool because if you have one of these NFTs, the platform will detect it and automatically will give you like cool stuff in the game only for those owners. And also right now, actually, the game is on a private beta, but if you do have one of these NFTs from these collections or these games, you're able to play the game. So just adding more cool stuff and value for these communities that Web 2 games can also do it, but in a much more difficult way as it is in Web 3.
I think we had Steven drop off for a second. I'm curious then, we seem to be kind of talking around this kind of concept of the avatar, right? Being able to see your character, being able to kind of customize them and kind of project your aesthetics into the game, into the gaming worlds for others to see, for you to see. With the kind of the emergence of the Web3 metaverse, the concept of the avatar has become kind of a big deal. Being able to have your persona and then kind of move it across the different worlds, but we haven't seen as much adoption for this in terms of kind of actual usage and actual kind of world engagement. Do you think that third-person shooters can change that? Can third-person shooters become that catalyst where the avatar kind of materializes and becomes critical to gamers?
I would say never discount the leaderboard. What comes first and what a lot of people in Web3 forget about is what's most meaningful is your username and your username on a leaderboard. And having an avatar is something, it's an amazing way to represent who you are truly as an individual. And every single metaverse game, Web3 game, should give the user the opportunity to truly customize their avatar to be representative of who they are. And if there is that customized, if there's that functionality around customizing things, then no matter which environment you're in, you can always remake who you are in the light that you want to see yourself and not be fixed on the attributes that they provide you. And I think these are all really important values to remember when you're aligning expectations with gamers.
Personally, I'm not really a big fan of this term metaverse. I think that it's a buzzword that's been used over the last 12 to 24 months. Games have been enabling players to create their own characters and have their own avatars and things like that inside games for decades, since like the 90s, and of course now there are plenty of platforms where you can have an avatar maybe in the PlayStation store, for example, or the Nintendo store. You can there's Nintendo Me Spaces, for example, where you can have your character dressed up like your favorite character from the games that you play on Nintendo platforms or PlayStation platforms. So it's not a new concept, and I don't think that third-person games need to revolutionize some kind of metaverse experience by bringing something new to the table, because it's already been done for the last 20 years. I think that basically you're going to have new franchises that are going to add their avatars to common spaces that are kind of like the lobbies between all the different games, like I was mentioning with PlayStation or Nintendo. And really, the games that are successful will be the ones that will have their avatars included in those worlds.
Do you see kind of the emergence of kind of a singular avatar where you have kind of a persona and a character, and you can take things between games? I think we heard a little bit about cross IP, but how kind of standardized or mass used do you expect that concept to become?
Personally, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think that there's going to be lots of different franchises. You're always going to have Marvel characters and Spider-Man characters and God of War and Grand Theft Auto characters, and from every different franchise. I don't think that there's going to be. I think that there will be one world. Like I say, it'll be like the first-party providers, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, maybe Ubisoft, for example. All of the big giants will probably have their own metaverse lobbies where players can get together and dress themselves up the way that they want to, either in a personal way or in a kind of dressed up like a character from their favorite game.
Well, we'll probably beg to differ here a little bit, but I think what I see is there are some products in the Web3 space that try to craft this interoperable passport of sorts, like an identity that crosses over. And how they actually can do it is they can take maybe a gun from the Harvest with a mask from Decimated, but and certain pieces from different games, right? Like iconic pieces from different games, pieced together, assembled in your avatar, all authenticated through blockchain, and accomplished. Each of those bits can be accomplished if you have perform certain fiats inside the game. For example, if you hit the leaderboard, or if you perform this quest with a score or something, then you earn these trophies, so to speak. So these trophies from different games can be assembled into one. I think that's always a good talking point, and good, and like what somebody said earlier, so a good talking point for going into a different kind of leaderboard, where you achieved X, Y, Z in different games, and then that's a good talking point. as a conversation starter for fellow gamers, and it's a shared experience, right? So I think that's always it's something probably easier in Web3. Integrate at the very least.
Yeah, the interoperability is there. The tech is there. We can do it in Rocket Monsters. It's just a matter of the character integration to pull that character into play and putting it in our system because the wallet's just going to fetch and read what we have in play. I saw a game in development for 2023 recently, and they're actually building an entire universe where all of these different NFT projects can go in and actually play with those characters, kind of like Player One is what they're trying to achieve. I don't know how successful they will be, but it looks promising. So being able to play with your character in another game is very achievable. Being able to touching back on the evolution of a character as well can be tied to skill tree, the use of dynamic NFTs through gatekeeping software like Chainlink. So there's a lot of stuff that's already in use and already available for us to do these things. We've already been looking at a lot of it and looking to deploy that within our game specifically. We want other games to be able to have their players bring characters in.
I kind of feel like it's almost like wishful thinking that this is going to happen because it's technologically almost impossible to do. Because to begin with, you've got different game engines that different people are developing their games in. Then you've got different naming conventions where people are naming their animation rigs, their texture maps, even like the different types of texture maps that you get from one piece of software from the next are all different. So in order
low poly, high poly.
Yeah, exactly. Low poly, high poly, different rigs, different
hitbox size,
all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it's like you would need to make everybody in the world who's making games to standardize how they're developing their games in order for it to work. You know, even in our case, using Unreal Engine 5, we've been using Unreal Engine 4 for years. Now we're using Unreal Engine 5. That doesn't mean to say that our game will be compatible with other people's games who are making games in Unreal Engine 5. There's most likely going to be a lot of conflicts. So it's very, very technically difficult to try and bring everything together and to have interoperability. In our case, what we plan to do is just have interoperability with our own ecosystem of games that we standardize and bring into our platform, which is it's a challenge in itself. It takes a long time, but I kind of feel like publishers like Ubisoft, 2K Games, Deep Silver, etc., they're probably going to have interoperability with their own games like they already do. If you play Assassin's Creed, if you play Far Cry, if you play Ghost Recon Wildlands, you can win skins from the other games that you play almost as an incentive to try and get you to, play other games that they have inside their ecosystem. I think that's really the only way that it'll work. So you're going to have publishers that are going to own IP, and all of the avatars will be available under those IP umbrellas. And you can have brand partnerships between different franchises where one avatar from one ecosystem works in another ecosystem.
I have to very much agree with everything you just said. It is wishful thinking, and when you think about it, you think about how many different types of FBX models it would require. Let's just use like a DeGods or Solana Monkey business as the example, they would need maybe like upwards of 5-6 different types of FBX models to be playable across different games, unless there was standardization, within them. And when we're talking about a competitive esports, hitbox size is incredibly important. The field of vision that the individual character may have within the game itself may have a tactical advantage, down to color schemes and textures, like you said. So I do think that the long-term route would be one where, within your own gaming environment, maybe characters are functional across those individual franchises. And yeah, through business development, people will achieve brand deals and get that cross-functionality. but it's wishful thinking to imagine everybody gets to kind of integrate together.
And also, you've got to bear in mind that a lot of these big companies are in competition with each other. So the reason that you don't see Sonic the Hedgehog on the Nintendo platform is because Sonic the Hedgehog is a PlayStation, a Sega brand rather than a Nintendo brand. You don't see Mario inside Sonic the Hedgehog games because, again, they don't have brand partnerships because they're competitors. So it's only when you have those kind of brand partnerships where there's a conglomerate that owns all of the IP or that publishes all the IP. In the case of Sony, for example, PlayStation Sony, they're publishing God of War, Spider-Man, Uncharted, etc. So that's where you can have all of those avatars that will be interoperable between, not between those games, but between, as I mentioned before, the lobbies that are the central point between all those games, almost like your virtual space where you meet up with other gamers before you go and play games with them.
Maybe together we could do a better job of giving our users the corresponding FBX models, for the NFTs that they own, and they could bring them into those virtual environments. Maybe that's the Venn diagram of where we overlap.
Yeah, sure. I think that you definitely need to have a kind of your documentation for content creators or other partners, so that then they can create their assets that will be will be usable inside your platform. For example, this is what we're planning to do as well with our user-generated content. In the distant future, you're talking like 2024, 2025, we're going to have documentation on our website where content creators will be able to see how they need to model characters, how they need to model vehicles and other types of assets that they can sell inside the Decimated game. But of course, they're going to have to adhere to those strict requirements and naming conventions in order for it to work. And we could also do this with external partners that want to partner up with us and they want to sell their assets inside the Decimated ecosystem. Of course, we'll have like a quality control process. We don't want to have, silly characters that are running around our world because it doesn't fit. But if there's content creators that can create content, avatars, etc., they can do that with all the specific guidelines that we'll set.
I'm curious. I mean, I guess I'm an optimist. I do believe we can solve kind of the pure technological challenges around this, and I do hear more and more from kind of developers around kind of standardization throughout the industry, right? I feel like it started to happen a bit even before kind of the whole Web3 movement. But the question becomes, and this is kind of where I've been hearing a lot of pushback from game designers, is how do you match logic, right? If you're taking kind of a lightsaber into kind of a medieval environment, does that destroy the integrity of the game? How do you take a blaster into kind of where there's only bows and arrows, or vice versa, and what does that do for the logic of the game, right? It's one thing to be able to kind of take the skins, but does that completely disintegrate the logic basis and the balancing that a game creates?
I think so, because if you think about it, when games like Call of Duty launch in the first instance, in the first week, everybody's like dressed up like a soldier. They're all like a kind of military. They all look very serious, like they're in the military. But then after a year, everybody's got like multicolored guns and like clown uniforms and stuff like that, and it turns into a bit of a circus. I think that if you have interoperability with every type of IP between other games, it's just going to be a mess. It's going to be a circus. So I think that, like, again, with the brand partnership ideas, like strategic partnerships between content creators and intellectual property owners is the best way forward, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think that you could go all at it with everything. It would have to be through brand partnerships, strategically, and very carefully vetting that. It was said that, yeah, you don't want a bunch of crazy characters that don't match environments running around. I know that we've been looking at a couple of different games ourselves, and we'll probably talk to them soon about doing it. But starting off small, not trying to take on everything at one time. The idea is amazingly huge. It's not impossible. Everything starts with the first step. So that's kind of where we're looking at. I don't foresee every single game studio all going at it and everybody's kumbaya. Brands are brands.
I've gone a bit against kind of what we typically do. We don't generally invite people from the audience until towards the end of the hour, but I know Susan has a lot to say in this subject, so I wanted to let her speak and kind of join in on the conversation. Susan, can you kind of introduce yourself and say a few words? Or not if your microphone isn't working. You have to be on a mobile device. I guess Susan will come back later. I wanted to, if Susan is not able to speak, I wanted to add kind of a few different controversial points. Now we've talked a little bit about the metaverse moniker and the concept of cross IP. What about play to earn? Right? The whole first wave of Web3 games was all about play to earn, and now this moniker seems to have disappeared. Do you still believe in the ability for gamers to earn at all? Oh, here's Susan. Susan, you're able to speak now. If you can introduce yourself and say a few words, that'd be great.
Yeah, sorry, I had some internet issues there. Hi, I'm Susan Cummings. I run a project called Petaverse Network at Tiny Rebel Games. And thanks for bringing me up, Ilya. I have a lot of opinions. I think it's great that everyone's talking about interoperability. It's definitely my favorite topic. But I don't think we're talking deeply enough about it. I've been in video games for 25 years now. I was one of the founders of 2K Games. There is a lot more possible than people are saying. Our theory on interoperability is that it's most definitively possible. Most games are built on Unity or Unreal, and our project is built on cross-chain compatibility and the notion that metadata can and should be reinterpreted so that art style isn't the problem that people are suggesting that it is. And in our mind, the what we're building, which starts with pets, but is way more broader than that, is that you can most definitively take your stuff with you wherever you want to go, and we're going to make sure that that's a possibility.
I'm going to reopen this conversation. If anybody has has anything to respond here, feel free to before we jump on.
Sorry, that was my mic drop moment.
No, yeah, mic drop. Yeah, I agree. It's right now in Rocket Monsters, you can get on and play. The community can play. Right now, you can play with a Polygon asset, a ETH asset, and a Solana asset. And all three of those can play simultaneously right now in Rocket Monsters for community play. It is completely possible to bring in, is it going to take some legwork and getting everything correct with a character that we're bringing in? Yeah. Does the model of that character, as in regards to its home game, with all of the features that it has in there, does that carry over into our game? Probably not. If I go to someone else's house, I'm now under that house's rules. So I'm not changing the order of a house because I'm coming from mine. So there's different steps that we can take to make this happen. And I agree, it is completely possible.
And about to happen, so we're building our project very openly out in the open. We're building an open standard for what we call human readable reinterpretable metadata, which is similar to how the Loot NFT project thought about it. We're defining things with a long list of metadata that we think is relevant to a developer that wanted to support it. Not just their behavioral characteristics, but things like their D&D alignment, their elemental abilities, and so forth. So it becomes a blueprint for how this thing should behave in other worlds. Alongside that, we're going to allow everyone free access to our tech stack. So we'll make it really easy for you to create experiences for them. But if you want to, you can fork off and decide that they should look like anime in your world. In that case, some of what we're providing will be relevant. Some of it will be requiring some heavy lifting. And so we need to go further in terms of what we provide to the community if we want them to build stuff. We're providing a model, rig, animations, blend shapes, sample Unity systems, AI systems, etc., so that we actually can have that experience and bring stuff with us between worlds. And then on the blockchain side, blockchains are going to continue to emerge and go away. And decades from now, there are probably going to be blockchains you've never even heard of. And so that's why we also think it's really important that your stuff should work simultaneously across blockchains wherever you want to use it. Those two fundamental things, cross-chain compatibility and reinterpretable data, make it possible right now.
Indeed.
Okay. So I want to reopen now the Pandora's box of play to earn, and see, do we believe that, in Web3, where it comes to third-person shooter games, that players can and should be able to earn, or is this something that will kind of go by wayside as kind of a failed experiment of the first wave of blockchain games?
I think that the way that play to earn has been made, the model itself doesn't sustain. It's not sustainable because the money is kind of like rewarded by nothing. So there's only money flowing out of the game and not in. There probably will be models that can be sustainable, maybe earning very little money, and the money that you earn will be kind of like injected via sponsors or like external money. But for right now, the models don't really work, and even worse in a bear market that we have right now. But yeah, maybe someone has another opinion here.
Fundamentally, the issue with play to earn is the earn element, right? The earn doesn't exist, as we saw with Step In on many Axie Infinity. At BR1, we studied thousands of hours of gamer guilds, scholar liquidity problems, and P2E games. And we devised an economic model that is not play to earn, it's kill to earn, die to lose. In our game, you pay to spawn. In the $1 game mode, you put up $1 in USDC to spawn into a map of 300 players. For every person you kill, you earn the greater of 10% of all the money on them, or their entry fee. As you can see clearly, the earn element comes from the financial capital that has been risked by your opponent. A zero-sum, scalable model, if you're willing to risk it for the biscuit.
I chime in and say that I don't think play to earn was ever a good idea. I think play and earn is something that, I think we can all live with. Like, there's nothing wrong with being able to earn money while you play, but, no self-respecting gamer other than like esports is playing games because they want to earn money. It's nice if you can, but it is never what it should have been about. And these games were being pitched on the back of tokenomics and monetization without ever even discussing what the game is, without having any ability to make games. And so it was always going to be a train wreck. It's just where it all started. Digital ownership is really, in my mind, the holistic use case. Like, we've turned games into DeFi and tokenomics, and the gamers are never going to accept that ever. And there's so many dangers in some of these things that are being discussed right now, because it's just the wrong message for gamers. We all get that we buy stuff in games and it isn't really ours, right? We didn't realize this, but it was true. And your kids play Fortnite, or you play Fortnite, and they spend a fortune on it and they can't do anything with it afterwards. That's rental. And so really, that's the message that needs to get to gamers. The rest of it is just icing on top. The message is, you buy your stuff, it is yours, and if you ever decide you want to cash out, you can cash out and sell your stuff to somebody else. But I think it's really a mistake if we ever want to get to the mass market to make it about something that's essentially a security. I just don't think it's the purpose of video games for most people.
I would have to agree. If we all reflect on an aging demographic, you look at like an older generation, and when people play games, usually, when we talk about gaming, the term gaming refers to gambling. It refers to skill-based games like poker that have elements of chance. And I think for an aging demographic, even like myself, I want to play video games for the rest of my life, but I'm going to be looking for an additional level of thrill in those everyday games. And once there's a financial risk element or a monetary incentivization element, you never get the same level of thrill unless you have that associated financial element. And I love looking at poker as a great example of this. Is nobody plays poker for play money. And I believe in a world where when you start playing games where you could commit capital on every single round that you play, you achieve an incredible level of excitement that is not for an age under 18. We target specifically 25 to 35, but it's incredibly exciting in a niche that is truly yet to be explored. The risk-based shooter.
Yeah, I think play to earn is slowly seeing its way out. The bear market has been weeding those projects out. It's not viable. It's not a viable solution to just pay gamers to show up. That goes for tournaments as well. It's not something that can continue on, giving out huge pots just to get people to play. I play games every day, every day. I don't get paid to play Call of Duty. I don't get paid to play Killer Instinct. I play it because it's fun, because it's adrenaline, because I love games. So being able to have that possibility to earn, yeah, that's awesome, but it shouldn't be the main focus of the game. If I'm simply going to a game because I know I'm going to earn something, and that's just a different mindset. It's not a true player mindset. It's just what can I get out of this, and let's suck it dry. So I don't. I hope they completely go away. I hope that we get some really good game economies going with all of the awesome games that I see coming around, and that it's used wisely, not just as a pitch for the entire game.
No, totally down. Actually, I don't mean to reiterate, but it's generally you want people to get value out of the game, right? Not just take money from the game. That would be terrible. But I think where we are right now, I think a lot of companies though are still leveraging the copium or the WAGMI folks by somewhat still playing it up in a sense, admittedly playing up the earn element in some way or form, right? Because we can't run away there. The language is there in terms of, or the narrative is there in terms of blockchain, or you can cash it out. So there has to. I don't think we can run away from the earning element of it. And then there are some studios do so-called cash in on it or use it as a growth driver, right? But it's not something, I agree, it's not something that we should totally lean on, because people should focus more on the play and the entertainment value they get out of it instead of sucking money from the game. Yeah, but I just think it's an interesting juncture because now we have to live with, the When Lambo folks that still come to the server, and there's this balance, somehow that the studios have to walk in catering to both you know, the When Lambo folks and the hardcore gamers.
I'm gonna pour some fuel on this fire. I'm really enjoying this kind of back and forth around play to earn, but I feel like a lot of it's kind of going around direct monetary rewards for players performing certain actions. But as we see kind of worlds become kind of gamer owner based, right? You own what you find, what you build, what you make. The concept of UGC becomes kind of and introduces another earning potential, right? There's a lot of content that's being created, a lot of assets, a lot of skins, a lot of kind of even game mods that are being created by gamers themselves. That based on the concept of ownership and different monetization skills, has earning potential. Does that change the dynamic? Is it, can you play, quote unquote, or build or do stuff to earn within games in a long-term sustainable way? Because gamers do add value by playing a game, so kind of the pie grows. Does their piece of that pie also grow?
I think so. I think with UGC and players creating can be viable. We talk with Sandstorm quite a bit, did an AMA with them, and they're tied to Sandbox, and they've created an entire new deal where people can come in and create the content, and then that content is sold to be played inside of the game. So they've kind of just been building up to this, and it's taking off. The people are really enjoying being able to build for that game. So I do see use cases for it. We will probably do something like that in Rocket Monsters with our land. So yeah, I do see some use case for that.
I was going to add that obviously the modder community is massive. Anytime that there's a successful game like Grand Theft Auto, Cyberpunk 2077, Fallout, for example, Skyrim, you have armies of people that are modding these games to make them look better, to add new content to them and stuff like that. But a lot of the time, these mods are available for free downloads on the Nexus website, for example. I think that if platforms who are developing the games open up the modder community so that they can monetize their content through the developer or the publisher of the IP, it would be a really, really beneficial tool for these modders to be able to do a bit of rev share with the original content creators. So absolutely, this is a really good idea. And this is exactly what we're planning to do with Decimated, is to open it up to modders and external vendors and talented artists on ArtStation, for example, to create content that they can sell inside the Decimated platform to a group of gamers that want to buy it.
I think that we kind of touched upon this quite a bit, but especially as the concept of land comes up, I'm curious, do you see, with the emergence of Web3, the kind of the borders between genres start to kind of blur a little bit? Do you see, for instance, third-person shooters kind of evolve into, MMO, RPG type environments? Because, with the introduction of lands, right, you do start to have persistent environments, or at least sections of persistent environments. Does that change kind of the rules of the game for does it change the genre type, and does it kind of introduce something new to third-person shooters?
We get caught up on titles because it's the first thing that we look at on the label. Rocket Monsters is third-person shooter, and we have several different levels. We have racing, but we also have the environment where people can build, have bare homes, and projects can come in. We've done different stuff, like we have an arcade inside of Rocket Monsters where we can pull in a browser-based game straight into Rocket Monsters. So creating these different environments, we've built 4 very large cities to actually have that option for players who maybe just want to build or just enjoy a separate world. It's the whole reason that we built out in space. We're trying to get all the different levels of players. You have killers, achievers, socializers, explorers, whatnot. So we're trying to give options within Rocket Monsters. So we're not just a shooter. We have the racing, and then of course we have the land that we're developing. So we're trying to put the different options for us, and that's where we're kind of blurring the lines.
I was going to say that in regards to the question, can third-person games evolve into MMOs? I think this really depends on the owners of the IP, the developers, and how they want to grow it. I mean, you get single-player games like Just Cause 3, Just Cause 4, and it ends up that the community are the ones that mod it to make it multiplayer, and then essentially make it almost into an MMO where you can go around the entire map and you can destroy all the different points of interest, which is essentially what you do in the single-player version. Then you've got Grand Theft Auto 5, for example. They open that up so that it is actually like an MMO. But I think that generally, a lot of the time, it's the communities that are, if they want to make a single player third-person game into an MMO, then they'll mod it to enable that functionality unless the developers do it themselves. But of course, there's going to be lots of games that don't really suit or require the need for there to be millions of players or hundreds of thousands of players all playing at once in the same world. But of course, sometimes it works, like Fallout is another example. They were like, why don't we make this multiplayer? And they tried it with Fallout 76. It didn't work, unfortunately, but I think that's more because their engine wasn't designed for multiplayer. And I've had this problem myself, actually, with a game that I developed many years ago, where we had a third-person game that was single player. And then we were like, okay, great, we've got all the mechanics down, let's make this multiplayer. And it just didn't work because we hadn't designed it for multiplayer from the beginning. If you want to make multiplayer games, MMOs, etc., you have to build the foundation to be multiplayer compatible, for everything to be replicated across the network between client and server. So yeah, if you're making single player games, generally they're probably going to be single player, unless you build it from the ground up that way.
In the history of building BR1 Infinite, we originally actually set out to build an MMORPG. I grew up playing games like RuneScape and World of Warcraft, and as we pursued the fantasy of an MMO, the design budget was just through the roof. And this was before we ever released a MVP or raised any capital. And quickly we determined that it was really important that one to lay down that groundwork, that foundation, as you just described. If you want to have hundreds of players in an individual Unity environment, in our case, and at the same time, how could we build the game now that we had in our pipeline that was revenue generating and would enable us to continue our pursuits? What was like the strongest ROI MVP? And as we did our R&D and as we continued to build, we realized Infinite, the third person, first person shooter, was the best opportunity to deliver a product to the masses and prove the value of our studio and what we could do. And with the assets that we created in building this game, paired alongside the user generated content that we give users, the FBX models corresponding to their characters in the map, and you give them the opportunity internally to build cool things. And well, it appears like we've significantly reduced the cost of delivering our next game, which may very well be an MMORPG with risk-based mechanics, and we've done it at a significantly reduced cost because we laid down that foundation of being able to host hundreds of individual users in a server with the dynamic scaling that's required for an MMO, but we did it in a shooter.
Yeah, foundation, it's extremely important. It's one of the first things that we looked at, and we did replications, no joke. So right now we are multiplayer, and we started that foundationally rather than, okay, we're a shooter and we're single player and we're fighting against AI. Oh, we got to go all the way back and start from scratch again. So it's extremely important to get that decided right away, because going back after you already have players, that's going to be a hard road.
We're getting to kind of the top of the hour, and so I want to finish up with kind of one last question that that may deserve its own its own talk. But we often hear about AAA games and big publishers and kind of the expectations for AAA games. For now, the traditional big publishers have kind of stayed away from Web3. They've tried it. There've been a number of kind of letdowns, and they've been very hesitant. But there is kind of this expectation that at some point they will be coming into Web3. How do you compete with those big publishers, and is there a way for kind of Web3 native game developers and publishers to kind of hold their own as they go to the traditional gaming markets?
First and foremost, you have to focus on your game and how fun it is and how cool the graphics are and how stable the build is and just how fun generally the game will be. And certainly not talking about your tech stack, about which blockchain you're using and maybe other type of buzzwords and things like that. I think that gamers want to play games that they feel they can get immersed in, that they're going to enjoy playing, that they're going to spend hundreds of hours playing. And I think that if people are trying to be sold something else other than that, then they're not going to be interested. They're probably going to think that there's something dodgy about it. So I think that competing against traditional game companies and publishers and developers is to try and match the level of quality that they're creating games at, to the level of quality that they create games. So it's really, really difficult. But of course, the games industry is split down into sectors, right? You've got AAA, AA, indie, casual games, mobile games, and that kind of thing. So you have to find which niche your game will fit into, and then kind of aim for that demographic of people that like to play those kind of games and support developers of those kind of games.
I'd say, it's all about collaboration, not competition. And in building video games, a lot of these publishers, whether they're blue chip, AAA, whatever, they are looking for an opportunity to participate in this space. They're not going to risk their brand integrity to build a game themselves right now, but they will invest in you. we were lucky enough to score an investment from Krafton, the owners of PUBG, as well as Justin Collin, the co-founder of Twitch. And as you build out your brand and you deliver on your product, having those relevant parties on your cap table, I think gives you a certain level of legitimacy in the space, and at the same time creates barriers to entry. So I would always chase those relevant parties if you're raising capital.
Yeah, and to that end, I think what you're going to more than likely see is a replication of what happened in mobile. I don't think there's a lot of danger in traditional game publishers competing with any of us at the moment, for what it's worth. I think that for existing games, no one wants to risk alienating their user base until gamers are sort of more accepting of Web3. So there's not much danger there. I think that what you're going to see is investment and ultimately acquisition, just like what happened in mobile games. It's why Take-Two ultimately bought Zynga like a decade and a half later. I think if it weren't for the horrible market right now, you would have seen it sooner. I kind of predicted that next year you'd start to see some of those acquisitions. I think it's now going to go to later, unless it's going to be like fire sale sort of purchases. But I think it's going to take time for those guys to catch up. And it's a very different ethos. Going back to what Evan just said, this notion that we don't need to compete with each other, that we can collaborate, is very peculiar to Web3. It is definitely not how traditional game publishers think. It certainly wasn't how I thought when I was a game publisher. And so I think that gives us an edge. I think it's the same with big brands. People think that Disney is going to come in and take over. Not really. Disney isn't comfortable with people reinterpreting their art style or giving people sole license over a one-of-one that they created. There's so much like inherently a part of Web3 culture that is just diametrically opposed to the way any of these guys think right now. And, perhaps eventually they're going to have to catch up to that once the space is successful. But for now, there are about 10,000 people responsible for most of NFT purchasing. The big challenge is, how do we start to get beyond that? How do we get to the mass market? And that's when game companies will pay attention, by the way. None of them want to make games for 10,000 people, and they certainly don't want to risk their user bases for 10,000 people.
Yeah, I would say just focus on your game builds. We have community. It's something that we do have in Web3. It's a totally different environment. Building out some of our developers, they had worked for previous studios, and the way that they don't work well together is something that you see in that industry. Here with the collaboration, the partnerships, we have something really good that we can build off of, a really good foundation with collabing with other games to build out. I do believe that acquisition will come as well, because we do have a good product. Not now that we're getting away from the whole play to earn thing, I think we'll see a nice change coming.
Awesome. And this takes us to the top of the hour. I don't want to interrupt this, but we've reached the end of this particular talk. There's so much more I want to ask, and so much more that I think we need to discuss. So potentially we'll get this group back together and talk some more. But I want to thank all of the speakers for coming on and sharing their thoughts. I want to thank everybody in the audience for joining in. And remember, this is a weekly space. So if you have ideas, if you have things to talk about, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be back here next week talking about Web3 gaming. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Great
Thank
to meet
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
The future of gaming is now.